In this lesson, we will examine client attitudes, beliefs, and biases. Know your client. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to discuss qualitative attributes that influence and drive client behavior, explain how a client's values and attitudes affect a planner's recommendations, analyze a client's degree of risk aversion, and describe how behavioral psychology influences a client's decision-making ability. Only by truly understanding your client can you create a financial plan that's right for them. That's because in understanding our client holistically, both the inside and outside issues, can we create a plan that enables the client to get to where they want to go in a way that they're willing to get there. The image on this slide frames the myriad of qualitative and quantitative attributes that we need to understand. Yes, we need to understand the quantitative financials, including financial capacity, annual cash flow, and human capital. But perhaps even more importantly, we need to understand the qualitative. We need to understand what's going on inside our client's psyche, because that will impact decision making. This means discovering our client's goals, objectives, needs, and true motivations, those values and beliefs that ultimately drive behavior. Moreover, we need to grasp how cultural and sociological backgrounds impact their behaviors and values. We need to understand their biases, their constraints and preferences, their tolerance for risk and uncertainty, their learning styles, and financial knowledge and investment experience. We need to understand the complete person and the dynamics of the couple. Clearly, understanding our clients involves more than just knowing the financials. Does the client understand the difference between a want and a need? What are the core goals? And what are the priorities when multiple goals exist? What's really important to our clients? Is it giving their children and grandchildren a head start? Is it promoting a charitable entity that shares the client's values and beliefs? Is it following dreams and ambitions that were set aside for many years? Communication with the client is all about finding answers to questions like this. Some of the answers, or the hints which lead to answers, will come from listening to financial memories and experiences, especially those that have a lasting emotional impact. Prior investment and planning experiences and knowledge of the markets are huge influencers on behaviors and beliefs. And this backdrop will impact client decision making. We need to understand their preferences and constraints. What choices has the client or the couple made concerning lifestyle, investments, schools for themselves or their children? What about their career path? What constraints need to be considered? For example, would tax recognition impact a recommendation or a decision? The family's history offers tremendous insight into how beliefs and attitudes developed. Who served as mentors? What lessons were learned? What wounds or restrictive thinking is still in place? Of course, we certainly need to quantify who is currently included in the plan, i.e. the family boundary. And we need to think about and expect changes to that boundary. What is the client's tolerance for risk and uncertainty? Is that tolerance realistic? Is it too conservative for the time horizon and need? How does culture impact that baseline risk tolerance? Risk tolerance cannot be measured with complete accuracy. One reason for that is because many clients will say they're more willing to take on risk than they really are. While a person's baseline risk tolerance remains amazingly level over a lifetime, willingness to hold volatility changes over time, often a function of how the markets are doing and current circumstances. Regardless of these challenges, The financial planner must try and gauge the client's tolerance prior to formulating a financial plan. An interesting approach to the challenge of risk tolerance assessment is offered by Dr. David Cordell in his published article entitled Risk Pack: How to Evaluate Risk Tolerance. His approach combines questionnaire responses regarding attitude towards risk, financial capacity, i.e. net worth and cash flow, investor knowledge, and propensity, or what was the past investment activity. Do you see how this combination assessment lets you not only hear what the client is saying, but see what they've done in the past and weigh that with financial stability and knowledge? Note that it's important for financial planners to document their client responses. It's important to realize that client perceptions about money and planning are often affected by background and current financial status. For example, a planner conducts separate meetings with individuals. One is young, one's middle-aged, one's elderly. Based on the discussion, the planner discovers that the middle-aged client is a risk taker and not focused on saving enough for retirement. Just telling that person that they should be saving for the future might not lead to a successful communication, a better decision. The older client might have experienced the Great Depression. That experience might have caused a history of saving rather than consumption. So telling that older client that they should just start enjoying life and spend some of their money may be received with a blank stare. Younger clients are concerned about the risk of Social Security, the viability of the Social Security system. Thus, the younger person who has this concern may be open to talking about a systematic savings program. You can see how similar differences might exist between clients responsible for dependents, children or elderly parents, and those clients without dependents. Current cash flow situations, positions of net worth clearly impact the way clients view saving disciplines, spending habits, and estate planning needs. Sometimes there'll be special needs that will drive a client's financial decision-making behavior. The client may have a responsibility for dependents with ongoing care needs. There might be family health histories that raise concerns about future needs. There might be a closely held business to transition or issues of social consciousness that are important to the client. Many times the practitioner may not be aware of these needs until they question the client to find out about them. A formal questionnaire may be helpful. What transitional event brought the client to your door? Often an event is the trigger that alters that person's thinking. That trigger that makes them realize financial planning help is needed. Life transitions include divorce, loss of a spouse, change in family boundaries, a financial loss or cash flow windfall, disability, a new responsibility such as birth of a child, recent marriage, a new focus, for example, need to start funding that retirement. Often these events are aligned with life cycle transitions. Discovery involves asking questions because questions lead to answers. The challenge is, of course, to ask the right questions. So what might be the right question? Well, from the perspective of the client, it might be a question that helps that person or that couple focus on goals that are truly meaningful to them. Or maybe questions that help them discover their financial attitudes and beliefs. From the perspective of the planner, it might be a question that helps the planner to understand the client's values, their motivations, their history, their goals. On this slide, you see examples of questions that might help you understand a client's mindset. For example, you might say, what advice would you give your child if they asked you, what is the secret to investing? Tell me, what lessons did your parents teach you about managing money? Try to recall a situation when you had an opportunity to invest in something, maybe a real estate property or stock or a mutual fund. What did you feel when you weighed the opportunity against the risk? What is your definition of financial security? Do you see the similarity of these questions? They all solicit responses that reveal client values, attitudes, and motivations. Think of some other questions that you could use in working with your future clients. Questionnaires are valuable fact-finding tools. One benefit is the structure it brings to the data collection. Important topics that are typically covered in an asset questionnaire are income and expense data, assets and liabilities, insurance, tax, and estate planning documents, and a list of current advisors. Topically generally addressed in risk tolerance questionnaires are return objectives and needs, investment time horizons, liquidity needs, risk constraints and preferences, and investment experience. You will probably want to customize the questionnaires as needed for your own clients. A second benefit is that questionnaires get the client thinking about subjects prior to your interview session. One of the primary objectives in designing a questionnaire is to make sure it yields accurate information. The asset questionnaire is pretty straightforward. You ask for a list of expenses and incomes, and that's what you get. But the risk tolerance questionnaire is a different story. You're trying to quantify some complex issues, including willingness to accept portfolio volatility and drawdowns, return expectations on investments, guidance on time horizons, liquidity needs, preferences, and client constraints. In designing your questions, you should keep them specific and short. Focus each question on one issue. In asking about risk, for example, try more than one way to ask the same question. For example, when assessing a client's tolerance for portfolio volatility, you might ask something like, what percentage of your portfolio are you willing to risk during the year? Later in the questionnaire, you might show a graphic like this one to acquire information on the same subject. If the answers confirm each other, then you have a better sense of a true response. If they are contradictory, then you know you need to explore the topic in face-to-face dialogue. During this academic program, you'll be taking a course on behavioral finance, and I'm confident that you're going to find that course fascinating as you explore the cognitive and emotional biases that each of us encounter, whether or not we know it. Those biases that self-sabotage our own investment performance. Examples of cognitive biases that strongly influence our decision-making under conditions of uncertainty include loss aversion. This is where investors tend to weight the regret of a dollar loss more heavily than the potential of a dollar gain. Anchoring a decision on a prior experience, a memory, or a cue. Selectively recalling and weighting recent events, which could lead to maybe dedicating too much of your investment portfolio to one security, one hot stock. Framing, which means that the way a decision is worded will influence the person's decision. And stereotyping, which can lead to decisions that are based on faulty comparisons. Examples of emotional biases that impact our financial decision-making include regret avoidance, which lead investors to tend to hold on to losing securities, feeling that, hey, I haven't taken a loss until I actually sell the security. Ambiguity avoidance, which can lead to an investment portfolio that's far too conservative for the investment horizon and the ultimate need. Fear and greed. And the herding instinct, which causes individuals to feel safe when they are in a crowd or acting the same way as the majority. Do you see how these cognitive and emotional biases could lead to a restrictive, comfort zone, and less than rational decisions. In this lesson, you learned about qualitative attributes that influence clients' behavior, how a client's values and attitudes affect a planner's recommendations, risk aversion, and how behavioral psychology influences a client's decision-making ability.